And we are back here in the shop at St. Pete Fishing Outfitters. I'm here with my good friend, Captain Andrew Crabtree of Crabtree Fishing Adventures, and we're here to tell you a little bit about Spanish mackerel. But before we do, I'm excited to announce that Andrew is now a part of the HFF network, and he will be running inshore fishing trips, and we are very excited about the future. We've been fishing together for, what is it now, roughly about a year or so?
I've been fishing with Joe a little bit over a year. We've run several charters already together. We look forward to running a lot of trips, getting you guys on the fish. Let us know how we can help you out and put you on the fish in Tampa Bay. We both share a great passion of fishing here in Tampa Bay. Great fishing to be had, and we look forward to the future, growing together with HFF and running charters and doing videos for you guys.
Outstanding, outstanding. More video content, more fishing charters, everybody wins.
That's right.
The future is bright. So let's jump right into Spanish mackerel. Spanish mackerel are a great fishing resource all over the United States, in the southeast, I should say, from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up the Atlantic seaboard, probably Virginia, Chesapeake Bay area, maybe occasionally a little bit north of there. Definitely a very popular fish to catch, and we're going to tell you some keys on how to get these fish in the box. So let's jump right into, where do you find Spanish mackerel? Where are you catching them?
Personally, I like to fish for Spanish mackerel anywhere between around 5-6 feet down to 15, even 20 feet of depth. Usually I find them over rock piles, submerged wrecks, maybe even high spots within the bay. They do respond very well to tidal movements as well as chumming. You know, I like to cut bait. There's no secret that chumming is a key here where we fish here on the West Coast. It's great. You know, you get these fish fired up behind the boat. They'll come right behind the boat. You'll catch them 10-20 feet right behind the boat. It's a lot of fun for the family as well.
Definitely. They're a kind of fish where you can really just wear them out and they just come back every year. There's thousands and thousands of them. They're semi-pelagic, coastal pelagic. They move in and out of your bay systems. You can catch them off the beach. They're off every pier, you know, rock jetty. They're off the edge of the flats. Sometimes they're on the flats. But they're definitely a very accessible fish. I catch a lot of my Spanish mackerel while I'm doing my bottom fishing. So if I'm out doing that grouper fishing like you've seen in the other video, I'm also keeping an eye out for Spanish mackerel, and they will come around the boat. They're smelling those little pieces of shrimp and cut bait and all other stuff that's getting coughed up by the fish as we're dunking baits, and we're hooking fish and we're bringing up, and they're coughing up little pieces of bait. The Spanish sense that activity and they smell the bait. They come in right to the boat. I would say other key places you can catch them is around some of the big sand spoils in Tampa Bay, and you probably have some other features in your local system. But anywhere you have some deep water next to a large sand spoil, whether it was created by Mother Nature or it was created by man, if you've seen people running around there, there's probably Spanish mackerel nearby. There's several large sand spoils up around the Gandy, South Tampa area, near Weeden Island, and then there's a big flat on the east-southeast side of Tampa Bay that has a pretty sharp drop-off, and there's a lot of Spanish mackerel right there. Around Egmont Key, there's tons of them. They show up right there along Fort DeSoto. They seem to frequent these areas a lot, and usually I'm looking for either strikes on the surface or I'm looking for birds diving. One of those two things. The best sign is the birds. When you look, you know, I can see, you know, a mile over there, I see some birds clouding up and they start diving and hitting the water. It's going to be gulls, it's going to be terns, might be pelicans. Really good chance that's Spanish mackerel. It could be bonita. Could be some kings down there, could be some jacks,
could be some bluefish,
could be some bluefish. Bluefish are fun, but I find a lot of times that is Spanish. So if you want to head in that direction, if you see a lot of birds going nuts and coming down to the surface of the water, you want to check that out. Any other places you can think of where people could find Spanish mackerel?
Sometimes the passes. You know, you can get lucky and you can go to some of the passes on maybe an outgoing tide, where the tide's shooting out of those passes. You know, the 6. I like on a higher, you know, a higher current tide, outgoing tide, maybe the 6 to 10 foot zone. They're going to be right there. You know, they're going to wait for that bait. It's a conveyor belt for these fish. It just shoots the bait right to the fish. So you can get them chummed up in that current, get them right behind the boat, and load the box, just like Joe said. They're great to eat. They're a lot of fun to catch. You get a lot of violent strikes out of these fish too. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. So now that we know a few places where to catch Spanish mackerel, let's talk about what kind of things they like to eat. What do you find? What do you see them pursuing? We know what we like to throw at them. What do you see them chasing out there?
Well, it's no secret in Tampa Bay that live bait is king. Personally, myself, I see a big influx of the Spanish mackerel when the threadfin come into the bay. That starts around April or so. So they definitely want the live bait. I personally like to chum with the live bait, especially cutting live bait. I'll take threadfins, I'll take pilchards, I'll cut them into 3-4 pieces right over the side of the boat, let it drift right back with the current. That's a good way to get the Spanish right behind the boat. And then you throw your live bait on either a wire leader, or you could use, you know, a long shank hook with your regular fluorocarbon leader, like you would use with a regular inshore type fishing rod.
Right. Definitely. One thing you want to keep in mind is that sometimes these fish will key on a particular species of bait. So like Andrew was saying, sometimes they're following in thread fins, or it could be pilchards. One thing that I find that they really love is that bay anchovy, or silver sides or glass minnows. They really, really like that species of prey. And I can't count how many times I've caught Spanish. It hits the deck in the boat, it's thrashing around, and it coughs up 4 or 5 glass minnows.
Definitely.
And it'll do the same thing for the other species like pilchards, but I personally find that more often than not, I pick up something that's Spanish just coughed up, and it's got that big silver streak right down the middle. And I think if you can find lures that imitate that bay anchovy or glass minnow, then you're really matching the hatch, as they would say. But we have a variety of different lures out here laid in front of us, and we'll hold them up and show you. But I would say probably one of the #1 lures that you could use right now and go catch Spanish mackerel and other stuff really is the Spro Jig. We talked about these for catching mangrove snapper. Well, you better have them for Spanish mackerel. These things right here absolutely kill Spanish. And I'll hold up, this is a 1/4 ounce white with a little bit of a green head, and it glows in the dark. I think white and green and pink are probably the best colors. But this Spro Jig right here, cast it out, let it sink down, depending on how deep the water is. If I'm fishing out in the channel in Tampa Bay, you know, that's 40 to 50 feet. So I cast it and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at about 5 I start picking up the slack. The bait's still sinking, but I'm picking up a little bit of slack, and then I'm working it back. So I'll go ahead and take this rod right here. This is a Conflict 2 combo from Penn, and this is about the size you want, a 2500 size reel, lightweight rod. So I've cast my jig out there, I put it back in gear, and I've counted down, and then I'm going to be working it back rather aggressively. It's going to be a snap and then a quick pickup with the handle. A snap, quick pickup with the handle. Then I'm going to let it sink. Let it sink. Let it sink. Or if they really want it aggressive, if they're not hitting that, then I'll just constantly do that. And I can speed it up if I want. I can slow it down and just kill it for a second and then work it back like that. If I have the Spanish next to the boat, I'll just go ahead and flip that over, let the lure descend, count 1, 2, and so on. You know, if I'm over in 50 feet water, 50 feet of water, I'll let it sink down some more, let it fly off the reel, and then I'm going to start working it back. And I'll do that very aggressively. And the reason you do it aggressively is because you want it to look like a terrified, wounded bait fish. You want it to look absolutely, you know, scared death that it's going to get eaten. The more scared and injured that thing looks, the more convincing it is. So that is the general retrieve I have for these jigs. They imitate small bait fish very, very well. Now there's a couple other bait fish imitators we have here, and we've got this mini miradine here Really, really good small lure. Lots of species of fish like that. And then you also have this 3D Crystal Minnow here. This is one of the smallest, if not the smallest version of this lure that they have. It's great casted, it's great trolling. But this one is definitely a Spanish mackerel catcher. Then, soft plastics. We got these DOA terrorized. Throw this out. Work it relatively similar to the Spro Jig, but you want to give it a little bit more time in between snaps of the rod. You want it to jump and then kind of come down a little bit. You want it to jump. You may not want to work this lure quite as furiously as these Spro Jigs, but a pretty steady, quick retrieve with this will get the job done. Moving on, we've got the Doc's Goofy Jig. This thing casts a mile, and they love the little pink teaser that's on there. They'll hit the plain jig. It's just a piece of lead, really, and a hook that's painted, and it's got a little teaser fly on there with a smaller hook, and they love it to death. Throw it out there, I mean, you can just burn it back in. You can jerk it, but honestly, you can't hardly reel it fast enough. They'll just smack the heck out of it. If you're a fly fisherman, yeah, you know, we're trying to put more fly fishing content out there every now and then. I'm not a fly fisherman, but I do enjoy learning a few things about it. You've got your Clousers, you've got the Schminnows, and then you've got this Deceiver streamer right here. To me, these would all be good choices. If I'm honest, I don't see any reason why a Spanish mackerel wouldn't hit just about any fly on that wall. I mean, they're small. Some of them are very shiny, colored similar to bait fish. You could probably catch a Spanish on darn near any fly on that wall. They would probably eat it. But these are some of the, you know, the flies we've talked about in the past, and I think they would absolutely do really well. So now let's move on to leader lines. Now, Spanish mackerel have very sharp teeth. Depending on how big the mackerel is going to decide how big the teeth are, how big the gaps are between his teeth. So you want to go ahead and take us into the different ways you would protect your line against that.
Sure, definitely. A lot of times, if you know you're around a lot of big Spanish mackerel, you know, go ahead and use some wire. We have some wire set out here. I believe this is 32-pound wire. You can use this, and that's going to protect your line from those toothy critters out in the bay. If you don't want to use wire, or, you know, let's say you have the fish fired up already. They're fired up behind the boat. Maybe you've been fishing for some snapper. Maybe you've been fishing for some grouper. You know, whatever you're fishing for. Maybe you have some 30-pound leader already on your inshore setup. Go ahead and tie on a long shank hook. You know, the long shank hooks are awesome. I use these a lot. I catch fish up to 30 inches in Tampa Bay on these long shank hooks with 30-pound leader. Sometimes these fish are a little bit leader shy. You know, they still will bite the wire leader, but I generally always use this fluorocarbon. I use 30-pound fluorocarbon, the long shank hook, your standard, you know, 15, maybe 20-pound braided line on your spool. Throw that out there. These long shanks, they're going to be chewing on the shank of the hook. You know, these are long shank for a reason. That's why they're called long shank hooks. You know, the fish doesn't really get a chance. As long as you hook them properly, the fish is not going to get a chance to chew on your line and break your line. You still will lose some fish. It's going to happen. It's fishing, not catching, right? Yep. So the long shank hooks are awesome. They're going to chew on that wire hook. You're going to land a lot more fish than you would if you were just using a regular circle hook. They generally have big enough mouths. The takes are violent enough. As we all know, you get some pretty awesome and nasty strikes from Spanish mackerel. They're going to eat that regular circle hook. They're going to cut your line. It's literally like a scissor cut. Yep. You come back and your line is just gone. Yep. So the long shank hook definitely protects your line when using live bait. I like to go that route.
And the long shank hook, you know, if you go that direction, that definitely gives you a little more real estate to wiggle that hook out of his mouth. You know, if you're using a small short hook, you got to get your fingers close to those choppers, man. I don't like getting cut. So that's another benefit of the long shank hook. So typically me, if I know that I'm really going to be chasing Spanish mackerel and I want to be able to change lures quickly, I'm going to reach for about a 60-pound leader. 60-pound leader is very durable against Spanish mackerel teeth. You can catch a bunch of Spanish on a 60-pound leader. Eventually they will chew through it. It will happen, but it's going to take them a while. If you know you're going to be in some very large Spanish mackerel, something that might rival a juvenile kingfish, I recommend sticking with the wire, because those fish got a little bit stronger bite. They got bigger teeth, maybe a little bit bigger gaps between their teeth for that leader to sink all the way down in there and get sliced. I would recommend going that. In general though, if I'm going out today, I'm going to set up with a 60-pound leader for Spanish, and that gives me the option to just snip off quickly and tie on whatever else I want to tie. But as Andrew was saying, let's say maybe you were doing something else, snook fishing. We fish with a lot of 30-pound leader. You can cut off your little bait, your snook hook, put on that long shank, and you're good to go. Throw another pilchard out there.
That's right away.
So gives you that option. Well, if you got any questions for us, definitely leave a comment below, or you can email headfirstfishing@gmail.com. Check out hff.fish, and we'd love to get in touch with you. We'd love for you to call us or email us, and we'll see you next time.
Definitely give us a call. Let's take you out on Tampa Bay. Have an awesome fishing trip together. Thank you.